Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Gear Talk, and this time, as promised, the full review of the Pentax KF. Before we begin, as usual, if you want to support the channel, please put a like, subscribe and share with your friends. And if you want to go a step further, check the links down in the description and check out my books. Inkjet Fine Art Printing, everything you need to know to print fine art inkjet with your printer. Lasting Photographs, this is a novel based on a photographic plot, so it can be interesting and fun for a photographer, very good reviews online. And Photography, the F manual, as the title says, everything you need to know about photography. This said, let's talk about the Pentax KF. I made a video about my first impressions and you can check it here in the links. And I have to say that all the first impressions were confirmed with the deeper use of the camera. First of all, the body, the solidity of the body, it's really a nice body, it's solid, it doesn't feel plastic at all, it's all weather sealed, and I used it in the rain and it worked very well. So really a great body. The ergonomy of the camera, again, it's really good. I don't know if it's just me with Pentax. I always felt that Pentax have the greatest ergonomy of all the cameras, and to use this camera also with the big lenses, heavy lenses, is really easy. It's very stable in the hands and really a great ergonomy. So that was something that I had as a first impression, and using it a little bit more, it was really confirmed. But the third thing that is the most important for this camera is the viewfinder. The optical viewfinder with the real pentaprism is really fantastic. It's also, if the format of the camera is an APS-C, so it's not that big of a viewfinder, it's the magnitude, the enlargement is always nice, and it never gives a sense of claustrophobia looking inside. It's really luminous. It's really nice also to use manual focus lenses, because you can see the out of focus areas pretty well. So really a great experience, and I have to say that I miss this. For the last years I used the mirrorless camera, and with an optical viewfinder, rangefinder style, not a reflex, and using this camera I really love the reflex thing. It's to see the natural sheen through the lens with an optical viewfinder. That is something that is very great for me, and it's great for landscape and this kind of subjects, but there's not that much difference. Where I noticed a lot of difference is in low light situations. With you will see in the slideshow that I took some pictures inside, kind of working portraits, and also in studio. In studio was fantastic, because using the flash with the mirrorless camera is always a pain, because you have to set up the AVF to not show you the real exposure, because obviously the real exposure will be with the power of flash, not with just the pilot lights coming on the subject. So you have to stop the camera for that, and you have to remember to stop the camera the other way around when you end the shooting. And in a low light situation, the AVF always have some artifacts inside. So what I tend to do, if I have to use a mirrorless in studio, I tend to keep the pilot lights a little bit lighter and so on. With the reflex, it's fantastic. You can leave the lights as low as possible to keep the subject comfortable, and then you still see perfectly the subject and the expression and everything through the viewfinder. So that's fantastic. Pentax really did a great job with the pentaprism. And by the way, Pentax is the only company right now that is saying that they will stick with the reflex system, and I love that. I think they are doing a great job. They made really a great philosophic choice, saying that they will stay with the reflex. There's something absolutely better when you at least for me, I really prefer the optical viewfinder. It's just better. It's just better in many ways. So that was fantastic. I had the first impression about that. Using it, really, I appreciated even more the reflex system. After this little premise, here is a slideshow with some pictures that I took with this camera. And some things was just to test the camera around, like some landscape, to try to put the camera in difficult situations, and I will talk you more about that. And the other were assignments that I had to do, so I tried in a real scenario the camera. Here is the slideshow. I will talk to you more about the pictures later. as you see, I took different subjects to test the camera, and starting from the landscape, the first thing was when I did the first impression, I went around and took the pictures, and obviously with the automatic settings because I wanted to test the meter. And the meter was good, but I had a problem that using the multi-zone system, there was this prevalence of the focus zone that sometimes in the landscape overexposed or underexposed depended on the tonality of the focus point. And that was kind of annoying. I switched to a medium, an average with a little prevalence on the center, and was good. But then I read the manual and I discovered a very nice features that you can detach the autofocus point from the exposure. So when I discovered that, I did it. The exposure was no more connected with the focus point and was perfect for landscape. After that, the exposure meter was always able to keep the highlights perfectly in the image, and it was able to do it with images where there was the prevalence of the snow very white and some dark areas, and was able also to do it when the main of the subject was mostly dark and there was just little snow around. So it is doing a very good job in keeping the highlights inside the histogram of the exposure. So really good exposure meter. The spot meter is nice. I didn't use that much, I just tested it, but I didn't feel the need to do spot measurement around. Obviously, when I did the other assignments, one was the atelier, the Isoardi atelier, and the other one was the La Quercia restaurant. In that case, I put again back the setting that the prevalence of exposure was on the focus point, because in that case what you want to expose correctly is the face of the subject, and so it's great to have the focus point connected with the exposure. And it's very nice that can be changed in the menu. By the way, something that I always say is read the manual. When I do my first impression, when I get a new camera, I want to check it without reading the manual too much, just to have the first feeling. But if you want to use a camera, read the manual, because something like this connection or not of the focus point with the exposure is something that I got from the manual, and it's something that can change how you use the camera in a very deep way. Something I really like about Pentax in general, and this was confirmed in particular, is the menu. The menu on the Pentax are kind of very easy to use. There's not much sub-menus, so every setting you want is there. You don't have to click an option and click the sub-option and so on. And that for me is really nice. There's people that prefers the other way, but I really like the simplicity of the menu. Another thing that I like is that it's text and not just icons. Some text and some icons, and I prefer the text. Some people prefer the icons. They did really a good job, a good compromise to put text and icons together. And if you want something to change very quickly, there's a quick menu that you can access pushing the info button, and there is very easy to go and change the main settings that you decide. You can personalize the menu, and it's very nice. So they did really a good job with the menus. It's not complex at all. I kind of don't like all this complexity. In this case was made simple. By the way, if you want to know how is my ideal camera, just check out this video here that I did for the new year, the ops for my ops for the new year, and you will see that I'm not a fan of complex things in menu. In this case it was very easy to use, it was not pain. So Really good job also with the menu and the settings. What is important for every camera is the image quality, and in this case the image quality is great. I took the pictures in RAW and I used the DNG format. I wanted also to do a comparison between the .pef format and the DNG format, but I didn't found a software to use the PF. The camera is new, so I usually use Capture One, but it was not updated for the Pentax KF. And I tried the Pentax software, but I was not able to make it run on my Macintosh. There was a problem, never showed the images. So at the end, I tested the camera only with the DNG. I read online that between PF and DNG there's not a difference, so I think it's okay. But with DNG the image quality is great. The thing I always do with all the cameras and all the software, usually when you put a file in the software there are some default settings like sharpness, noise reduction and so on. What I did what I do always is to put at zero the sharpness, noise reduction and everything else. I like the image to look more natural and not with this too crusty sharpness around. So I like the image natural, and every image that you have seen in the slideshow was with the sharpness to zero and the noise reduction to zero. And the image quality is really good. For sure, something that helped a lot were the lenses that I had. By the way, I had this camera from the Italian importer, Fowa. That is a company importing a lot of very good products, and they distribute Pentax for Italy. They gave me this camera to test, and they gave me three very beautiful lenses. One is the 31mm 1.8 limited, that is very nice. I had the 85 1.4, that is another fantastic lens, and the 50mm 1.4, and I will do some videos about these specific lenses. So I had three great lenses and the image quality was great. I also tested the camera with the 100mm, it was a Pentax M, so a very old lens, and with the 35 2.8 I think is, and I did my Christmas picture with that, and it's perfect. So the sensor is great, the image quality is great, the dynamic range is really good. So it's I'd be really satisfied with this camera. 24 megapixels is really enough for a lot of things. So unless you have to do very large prints, 24 megapixel is really enough. When I hear the people talking about the megapixel, yes, if you have a lot of megapixels, usually is better, but I remember doing an exhibit some years ago. I had a lot of pictures that were taken at the time with the Canon, was 12 megapixels, and I printed it 40 inches by 40, something like that, very huge photographs, and there were visitors, amateur photographers, looking at the picture, wow, this is fantastic, sure is a 40 megapixel. And so sometime is the most important part is not really the megapixels count, but how you process the image and how you print the image later. So that's something important. 24 megapixels is really enough for a lot of situations. Is more than what I use right now professionally. So really good. Talking about the image quality, there's also the ISO. The ISO of this camera is going from 100. This is very nice because it's 100 native is kind of low, usually it's 200, and I love low ISO. I would love to see a digital camera with ISO going low as 12 or less, because I like to use wide aperture sometime outdoor, especially if I'm doing portrait on these kind of things, and low ISO are sometimes are very useful to me. I don't do much of very night low light situations. I don't do street photography at night, so the higher part of the ISO is not that important for me. This said, this camera goes perfectly from 100 ISO 6400, as every camera I tested in that range is good. Over 6400, you can see here, just the subject is just a wall in my house, but you can see that the grain starts to come in, the color noise starts to come in, and in my opinion, yeah, that high ISO can save the day sometime if you don't need much of sharpness and precision, but it's not very usable in a normal situation. So and that is the same thing that I found on every single camera. I still have to find a camera that keeps the promise in the high ISO. Obviously the pictures that I show you were without noise correction. If you apply noise correction, the image can become better, but when I test the camera I want to see what comes out from the sensor, not the capabilities of the post-processing software. Talking about the assignments doing with this camera, the first thing that I did was kind of a self-assignment, because I went to the Borgo San Damaso train station. It's a city now around here in Italy. At the train station they have beautiful couple of rooms with this plastic of the train. Is managed by some amateurs, some people that really love train models, and they were telling to go to visit also because the municipality is thinking to give that same place to change the destination of the place, and so they risk to be without a place where to use the trains. And I think it's fantastic to have the model trains at the station. It's something that is very nice. So I wanted to support their effort to stay there, and I went to take the pictures, and the camera was kind of really great. It's very easy to use, and the situation of light was kind of low, but was really nice to use it with the OVF, and also with this with the back display that is really nice because you can put it in every position. And it was nice for some photographs to put the camera in the model in some way and check with the movement of the LCD. Was easy to check the picture, so that was great. By the way, is the first situation where I test the autofocus, and the autofocus is really good. There's no problem. It's fast, and if you don't do sport with Formula 1 car and you need 150 frame per second and all these kind of things, the autofocus is great. It's precise, so it's fast enough to do also moving subjects. So that was the first assignment, and I appreciated the capability in low lights of the viewfinder and the camera in general. The other assignments were, one is an atelier where they produce ceramic, so is Giovanni Zonardi atelier. He produces these beautiful things with ceramic, and I was there. My intention was more to just take pictures of him, and more than the thing he produced. It's not the first time I was there, so I just had some fun with the camera, trying to take pictures, take pictures without being seen on these kind of things. And camera is great. Something that is fantastic of this camera is the IBS, the stabilization system. The sensor floats and shifts around. to compensate the movement of the photographer, and that's fantastic. It's 4.5 stops that you can get of advantage, so you can go very low with this camera, low speed, without having vibration. And when I did this assignment, something that I noticed was that I was so concentrated on testing the camera and the capabilities of the camera with low speed that I forgot that the subject was also moving. So I took some pictures where the stabilization worked perfectly, just the subject moved. So that was kind of fun. But the stabilization is absolutely fantastic. With the 85mm, I went down to 1/15, 1/8 of a second, and still the image was good. So it's really, really a nice thing. And by the way, the stabilization is fantastic also because it works with every possible lens, included all the lenses from the K series, and that's really, really nice. Third assignment was the restaurant, and La Quercia restaurant is a very nice place here in Boves, in my town, and there was another moment I appreciated the camera, and I appreciate especially the OVF. So I took the images, and was always the vision in the viewfinder was always clear, and was always a pleasure to use it. And I appreciate it also in that case. It was kind of a more faster pace and more pictures situation. So I had to change the lenses a couple of times, but also with the 85mm, this is really an heavy lens. I really appreciated the ergonomy of the camera. I appreciated how the camera felt in my hands. It didn't tire my hands, so really, really was a good impression. Obviously, I wanted to try also the camera with some vintage lenses. I did some macro with the 100mm. I did some landscape. By the way, I have this mountain in front of my house, just out of the balcony. So every time I want to test the lens, it's if it's a clear day, it's very easy to just go on the balcony, take the pictures. And I know that on the top of the mountain there's a cross, and you can really see if the lens is sharp or not based on how you see that cross. And by the way, my referral on that is still the Hasselblad 80mm 2.8 for the old Hasselblad. I tested it with a lot of cameras, and it's still the sharpest lens for that situation that I ever used. But the 100mm, the macro, was great, and you can see here the detail. And using other lenses like the 35mm was still really great. So really a nice things. And by the way, I love how Pentax decided to keep the compatibility with all the lenses, all the old lenses. For me, that is a philosophy that I really appreciate. Using this camera with the old lenses is very, very easy. If you use the camera in automatic mode, so aperture priority, you just click and the camera exposes the image correctly. If you use it in manual, it becomes a little bit strange. I don't know why this camera doesn't have the coupling, the physical coupling to feel the aperture in the camera. So when you move the aperture ring, the camera doesn't recognize the aperture. So to expose in manual, you have to push this green button here that will close the lens to the working aperture, measure the light, and so tell you the exposure. I have no idea why technically they didn't kept the coupling from the lens to the body. I would have preferred that, but still you can use the normal lenses, the old lenses, without problem, just with the green button. So it's a little bit trickier than I hoped, but still the compatibility is good. And that is something that is fantastic, because you can find a lot of Pentax lenses that are absolutely beautiful around, a lot of old Pentax lenses. One that comes to my mind is the 55 1.8. It's absolutely fantastic lens, and you can be able to use them with the digital camera. That's something that is superb. You can have access to really a lot of very cheap lenses on the used market, and a lot of fun. So kudos to Pentax for keeping the compatibility with the old lenses. Other things that was important for me to test with this camera is the pixel shifting. I never tested the pixel shifting on other cameras. I saw it around, so I used the pixel shifting for the first time with this camera, and I was kind of impressed. I used it for the Christmas card. I usually do a picture for Christmas with a subject that is about something that happened during the year. Sometimes are big facts, sometimes it's just something personal. In this case, I wanted to do an homage to Pentax that decided to produce again film cameras. The announcement just came out, and it was, wow, this is worth a dedication of my Christmas picture. So I took the pictures, and for that picture I used the 35mm 2.8, I think is that is an old lens, an old M lens, and I decided to use the pixel shifting features. And it's kind of strange. If I do a pixel peeping at 100% and so on, I see the difference, but it's not that great of a difference. It's a little bit more sharp with the pixel shifting, but not that much. If I look at the whole image, or especially if I print the image, the difference in depth is impressive. So it's really a great features. By the way, the pixel shifting is kind of simple. It uses the stabilization of the sensor, so when you took the pictures, in reality it takes 4 pictures moving 1 pixel on each direction. So what comes out is that for every pixel you have the information for every color, so you have the RGB information for every pixel. Pentax decided to just do the 4 shots keeping the same position, so just giving the color information to the pixel and not increasing the resolution of the sensor. So you will have a file that still is 24 megapixels. And with the RGB information, it's really changed a lot. And by the way, you really see in some way the limit of the digital technology and the Bayer pattern. That's something that with the normal Bayer pattern, every pixel must be the value, the RGB value of any pixel must be guessed by the value of the pixel and the values around, because there's a filter that can be red, green or blue. So it's kind of a guess. The exact color of the pixel is a guess done by the software. With this pixel shifting, you have all the information, and there's a lot of difference. I also tried the same things out of the balcony, just with some pictures. In the little details, you really can see a difference of depth. Again, it's not something so very evident when you go 100% and look at the image. You think, yeah, there's a difference, but not much. When you print the picture, the details that come out are really much more alive. It's much more three-dimensional. So that was really a good thing. Very easy to use, especially if you do a still life or landscape where you can put the camera on the tripod, and it's fantastic. There's a setting. In theory, you can do it handheld, but you really have to be have steady hands. And there's a setting for some moving objects. And I did some tests. If the moving object in the scene is very small, it works perfectly well. If there's something moving a little bit larger, it's not working that well, obviously. So best situation to use it, landscape or still life, these kind of things, and it's really worth to use. It's something that my next camera I want to have it, so that's important. As I say already, but again, a lot of people is critic of the Pentax autofocus, and I never had a problem with this camera. All the shots were in focus, the focus was where I wanted, and so on. But again, I didn't do sport of this kind of subject. At the end, the Pentax KF is a fantastic camera for a generic use. Really great image quality, great construction, great solidity, beautiful OVF, so it's really a great camera for general use. What I would love to see changed a little in this camera is the back display. It's when you turn on the camera, you have this huge back display to see all the data, and this is nice, but when you put the camera to your eyes to take the picture, the light of this display is really kind of annoying, especially in low light situation. It's kind of annoying. So the option is to press a couple of times the info button and turn the display off, and that is one way to do it. But at that point you have no information at all because there's not an external LCD, so you have to do again the info and go to the informations, and that is something that is a little bit complex. I want to see another thing is when you turn off the camera and turn it on, it again is turned on with the display on. So what I would love to see is on the firmware doing something where if I set the LCD off, it remains off also when I turn on and off the camera, so I can have the LCD off when I want, and eventually a way to just push for a moment info and see the information, push info again and turn it off or something like that. Or another things that can be for the future in other cameras, just a little sensor that when you put the camera close to your face, it feels it and turn off the display. So this was something that really I found a little bit annoying. But we have to remember that this camera is a camera that is a mid-range, is camera to enter a system, is not the top of the line, so it doesn't have an external LCD up here or something just for the data. So this is really working well. By the way, the good thing about the information here is that are very big, and if you start to become old and need glasses, this is very good. So it's nice, and something that I did a lot of times just to solve the problem is this, and I had all the information in the viewfinder. I didn't need more. So I would love to see this modification to keep the LCD on, but have something that turns on and off when you put the face near the viewfinder or another system in the firmware. As the last thing of this camera is the video, and I was asked about the video by a viewer, and he was interested especially to know how if the camera heated up during videos or not. So first of all, the video in this camera is high definition video, is not a 4K and nothing like that. It's good. It's doing. I used it for my vlog for the January, for the New Year's wishes. You can check it here, and the camera stayed up for almost 1 hour recording, and that was absolutely okay. No heating problem. In no way. It was not at the maximum FPS, was just 30 FPS, but it didn't have any problem. Another thing that I did was to put the camera in the high quality. I don't remember how many FPS is. It's written down here, and I just pointed the camera out of the window and let the camera record the sheen for as long as it stayed, and was I think half hour or something like that, and the camera content without heating. It's not summer, I'm not in a desert, so it's not a very high temperature outside. Inside is pretty good, and the camera didn't have problems, so that's a good thing. As the quality, the video is nice. It's the normal video that you can do with the camera that is not specific for video. The stabilization works if you keep the camera quite steady. The stabilization works pretty well. If you shake a little bit more, you start to see a lot of rolling shutter effects. So it's nice. It's a camera that you can use for some little video. If you want to do video, if you want to become win the Oscar as a director of some movie or something like that, no, it's not a camera for you. It's not a camera made for video. And I love this about Pentax because it's a camera with no compromise and very good for photography. And video is, yes, something more you can do, but is not the main goal of this camera. So it's a philosophy, it's a choice. And by the way, I'm tired to have cameras that have I'm a photographer, I like to do photography. I'm kind of tired to have cameras that come out and are really perfect for videos, have things like 120 FPS or this kind of things. Is not photography in my opinion. Photography is something a little bit different, and this camera is a photographer camera because the viewfinder is perfect and the quality is great and all these kind of things. It is not a camera for video. It's a great camera for photographers. So this is all about this camera. I think I already said a lot, and yes, I like this camera. Thank you very much to Pentax for let me have this camera to test, and it's absolutely a great camera to enter the Pentax system. I'm curious to test, I hope to test very soon the K1 and to see how is the top of the line. This is the camera to enter the system, and it's absolutely a nice camera. So thank you very much for watching. Before I say hello again, if you want to support the channel, put a like, subscribe, share with your friends, and if you want to do something more photography, they have manual, lasting photographs, beautiful novel, and inject fine art printing. You can check the book, you can check the t-shirt down in the link, and most of all, if you enjoy this kind of video, share it on social media. I need to reach a level where I can have some income from the video to go on and keep doing them. So I'm trying to reach the monetization level, and every time you share the video and someone see it, it's a great help for me. So if you enjoy the channel, please do it. This said, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.